And it's unbelievable. They go, well, you were there? Yes. What were you doing? He says, I was eating a chicken sandwich, a bag of Fritos, and a Coke. And they're going, you're right next to him, and everything's going, and you're hanging on the edge of it. And then all of a sudden, Jerry Ford steps in and goes, excuse me, I have a question. Do you have a criminal record? And the guy goes, excuse me? He goes, do you have a criminal record? And the guy goes, well, I was picked up. No, you're a felon, right? And the whole conversation drops. I go, oh my God, we're literally at the moment, literally 10 minutes before the shot takes place, we have a witness that's there, and you got to ask him, did you hear anything? Did you see anything?
Yeah, no.
And Jerry Ford told us, and as you mentioned, with Angleton and the guys, a few years later, out of nowhere, on a motorcade, another operation they were deeply involved in, right? He's made vice president of the United States.
Yeah, because the president's most popular president in American history is undone by a naval intel officer posing as a journalist.
Exactly.
Just from the Washington Post.
Probably a lot going on in your life, meaning you don't want to waste a lot of time thinking about life insurance, though you know you need it. We all need it. And that's why our friends at Policy Genius make it very, very simple. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies starting at just $276 a year for $1 million in coverage. Compare that rate with prices from other providers, which Policy Genius will help you do for free, and it proves what a great deal it is. They spell it out for you, all of it. These plans can help cover all the expenses your loved ones will incur if something were to happen to you, and those expenses remain even though you're gone. Things like mortgage payments, car loans, credit card debt. And that's not to mention
private, and it's one of the great frustrations as an American is you don't know what your government's doing and you have no way to find out. Even when it's done 60 years ago, you don't know. But some of it's taking place totally in public, the Tom Cotton stuff, and it grieves me to say this because I like Tom, and I think he's smart, really smart, actually, and a good guy in a lot of ways. But he's acting on behalf of CIA, not on behalf of the people of Arkansas, obviously. But then there's Lindsey Graham, who's like florid, out in public, like there's no kind of hiding who Lindsey Graham is, and what is that?
The whole Ukraine thing, he and Pompeo, how the weekend before the drone assault takes place, he's in Ukraine saying something's going to happen, he's in France. I mean, if you talk to people over there, it's like he had inside baseball. He was all jacked up and good things are going to happen. Pompeo's in like Odessa giving a talk. I mean, what is Mike Pompeo? There's a middle of a war over there. We're trying to extract ourselves. What is Mike Pompeo in Odessa giving some, a rally speech, essentially pump these guys up? And he's talking about certain things that could happen or certain positive things that hang in on this war. Exactly what President Trump's counter to. President Trump is trying to have everybody lay down their guns and let's go. Right now, the British papers report there's 1 million Russians dead or wounded. There's 750,000 Ukrainians dead or wounded. I mean, this has been devastating, like World War I type of casualties. President Trump is sitting there going, we need to put the guns down. I need to get people at the table. We need to talk. We'll even buy your dirt. We'll buy your rare earths. We'll put money in, which we oppose. But if President Trump thinks he needs that for a peace deal, we'll support him. What is Mike Pompeo in Odessa jacking these people up? What is Lindsey Graham over there jacking people up about? These questions have to be asked. We have to ask what part of our government is going against the commander-in-chief and what the commander-in-chief is trying to do.
Is it illegal for Lindsey to do that?
Well, there's Logan Act. I call for his arrest. Absolutely, or cancel his passport. Do two things: either don't let him back in the country or arrest him. And I argue about this in Pompeo also because I think there are arguments around the Logan Act that they're over there countering what the commander-in-chief's trying to do.
And they have security clearances too, which I don't have, and you don't have, I assume, a security clearance, not anymore.
Right.
But why does
I don't want one? Right?
No, I don't either. But
don't blame me.
But why does Lindsey Graham and why does Mike Pompeo have a security clearance?
Well, I think I got Mike because I'm very disappointed in him. I knew him for years, and I think the guy I know today, the guy I see today is not the guy I knew. And I think people have to. I think they ought to come on TV is they ought to have the NASCAR drivers, like who's payroll are they?
Exactly.
Right. The American people at least ought to be in a Chiron who they're taking money from.
Because what's the deal with Lindsey? Well, let me just say I've known Lindsey for 25 years, and it's impossible not to like Lindsey Graham. He's one of the most charming, funny. He's just a wonderful person to travel with. He's the most charming person in the world. I'll just say it because it's just true. I like if he was here, I would be having fun with Lindsey Graham. But his effect on the United States is so destructive. I don't understand what that is. What is his motive? You know him well, of course, because you're.
Well, I know. Look, I think number one, he's very involved in the Pentagon on our services committee. The Pentagon, the building runs like the building's going to run. I mean, it's $1 trillion. Why? When President Trump says we're going to go to a hemispheric defense, from Greenland to block the Russian submarines, to Alaska, maybe Canada for the Arctic, because that's the new great game of the 21st century, to the Panama Canal, because they're going to block the Chinese and they're going to get the Chinese out of the Caribbean. We'll deal with Venezuela. We'll have the Central Pacific, which has always been kind of our strategic pivot, the 3 island chains. And America's hermetically sealed. You add a Golden Dome or some sort of ballistic missile, America can live in peace, and we can do expeditionary. Not that we're not engaged in the world. You can do expeditionary forces anywhere you want in the world.
You can put Chinese infrastructure in St. Croix, which they have a lot of in St. Croix, which we control.
Exactly.
So you can't let the Chinese control your hemisphere. That seems reasonable, and they'll say to us, "Okay, get out of Japan." At which point you say, "Okay." That seems like logical.
This budget is not $1 trillion going up, right? Because right now it's over $1 trillion. If you add the supplement that's coming in, the reconciliation bill with the NDAA, you're over $1 trillion, and it's only going to keep increasing. This is the way the defense contractors make money. They embed it over there. They kind of run the building right now. You don't see any pushback by armed services. In fact, every district's got huge plants. As you know, our industrial policy that we do have is really around arms manufacturing,
yes, that's it.
Right? And it's a high margin business, and we want to sell weapons to the entire world. It's that system that's running the country. Remember, the difference between President Trump's first term and his second term is what happened under Biden is a massive concentration of power because they didn't back Lena Khan or the antitrust people like we have now in President Trump's administration, like Gail Slater, and what's happening to the FTC under Andrew Ferguson, taking big tech to court and trying to break them up. Right now, you have Wall Street, you have big tech, you have big agriculture, you have big pharma, you have the big healthcare industry, you have the defense contractors, you have the concentration of these massive industries that have every lobbyist, every communications expert, all the big law firms on their payroll. If you and I want to start today and say, hey, guess what, we want to take on one of the industries, let's take on big ag. You literally can't get a great law firm to represent you or great lobbyists because they're all hired by these guys. That concentration,
and they'll set up regulatory hurdles that are insurmountable.
This is the regulatory capital.
I'm living that in something that we're doing on the side, and you just find out that it's crazy.
That concentration of power.
Oh my God.
Regulatory capture and really regulatory merger. It's we said when we gave China everything after Tiananmen Square, when we gave them most favored nation status, WTO and access, that the more they get prosperous, because they were a backward agricultural country at the time. The more prosperous they get, the more they'll become like a liberal democracy in the United States. We actually have copied the model of the Chinese Communist Party. They have a handful of state-owned industries, very powerful, merged in with the central government, an authoritarian government. That's what we have, and that's what President Trump, the promise of President Trump, is to break that. The American people don't want it. They hate it. Now, they need the tools to do it, and that's why I think this next couple hundred days, coming after the 10th anniversary of really President Trump, is what happened. At the top of the escalator, Trump was in 7th place. Those people didn't know if he's serious about running or not.
No, right.
He had just gone to CPAC, I think, 90 days before. In the 2015 CPAC, Trump finished 7th in the poll at 3.5%.
I remember.
Behind all these guys. At the top of the escalator, he's in 7th. That night, they do a flash poll, I think, on CNN. He's first. Why? That talk was in a nomenclature and a vernacular that American people hadn't heard from a politician. About the border, about deportations, about China, about bringing jobs back, about ending the forever wars. Remember, as the campaign went on, he goes to South Carolina.
I'll never forget it.
And in South Carolina, he literally blew up the entire, not just Bush apparatus, kind of Fox and kind of everybody on the right that had been in there. And when he said it, you could hear the audience gasp. And so many commentators came on and said, well, that's the end of him, because
They all said that. Except me, because I was the only one at Fox News that I knew. I was like, yes, thank you for telling the truth finally.
but everybody around you was that he's finished.
They hated me for agreeing with him. They hated me
And
personally.
he won in a landslide.
Carl Rove, who was my neighbor and always got along with him. Again, perfectly charming guy, sort of. Very, not a good person at all, but smart and, Carl. But after that was the moment I realized was in that Greenville, South Carolina debate that all that mattered to them was a projection of force and power. That's it. Everything else was just
Because they were so shocked he said it and united the fact that he can't win.
That's when Bill Kristol turned against him, was that night. And if you could look it up, check his Twitter feed. The day before, Kristol was like, Trump's kind of a pig, but he's our pig, and actually we can kind of use him, and maybe we should make peace with Trump. Bill Kristol said that, who I used to work for many years. The day after that Greenville debate, he took the position that he has now, which is, we'll destroy the country to prevent Trump from exercising power. Like, he was a sworn enemy of Donald Trump's after that, when he went against the Iraq War. How weird. Why? If you killed a child in a DUI, okay, you're drunk, you accidentally run over a child, there's no possibility you could meaningfully advance in American life, because people would say, we've forgiven you, Steve, but you did something that's irresponsible. It's just horrible. It was a mistake. Yeah, it was a mistake, but it was horrible. We allowed the architects of the Iraq War, who gravely injured the United States, that all these people killed, Americans killed, to continue to advance. They were never held to account for what they did, ever, at all. They became the head of the World Bank. How did we do that?
The specter of that is what we faced over the last 72 hours. This is exactly the same pitch as the Iraq War. Weapons of mass destruction.
Oh, I know.
You have to get it. So they understand one thing. They think the playbook works. This is why we have to stop it. If we don't stop it now, it's going to work all the time. They think that playbook of lulling the American people to sleep and telling them there's these evil people that have to be taken down, and if they're taken down, everything's going to be fine after that, and that we face an apocalypse if that doesn't happen. They're running the Iraq War playbook with almost some of the same players, or at least the proteges, right, in the verticals of who those players were.
But why does institutional conservatism allow it? If Mike Pompeo shows up at the Republican county of dinner in some state, like, he's treated as, I was in a restaurant with him recently, I was like, oh, Mike Pompeo. He's treated as like a legitimate person. No one has ever, the right does not hold its own people accountable on the most basic level.
The Republican Party is controlled opposition, okay? Because they've never really put a fight. Let's go back to the three central tenets of Trumpism. Immigration, border and sovereignty, trade, and ending forever wars. The official apparatus of the Republican Party hates all three of them. It doesn't agree with any of them.
That's still true.
It's 100%. This is look what happened here in the last 24 hours on the immigration side. All of a sudden, they promulgated that because of big agriculture's needs, that we can no longer have raids on farms, raids on hotels, all of it. Now, that had to be countered by President Trump saying, hey, there's 20 million illegal aliens, I'm going to get them all out of here. And then today, or this morning, he came out with, we're going to triple down the raids in sanctuary cities, right? I'm going to get all these guys out of here. No, there's huge institutional fight led by Fox News, right? Their biggest is the forever wars. But if you look at the Wall Street Journal, and if you look at Fox News on the trade and bringing jobs back from China, they're very ambivalent about that. They're talking about the cost of living. I mean, they're putting up that, because they're all free traders, which is the way the country got in the first place. They're also quite ambivalent on the immigration and mass deportation. Remember, mass deportation is just not the criminals. You have to get, President Trump said day 20 million. I say it's 10, came in on Biden's watch. They all have to leave. But you're seeing a lot of ambivalence of that, particularly the Republican Party. The Wall Street Journal says, well, no, they add 2%, 1.5 to 2% to GDP, right, because they buy so much stuff. Number two, they've driven down wages among particularly low-skilled black and Hispanics. I say this is why we put the This is why 39% of black men are voting for us. This is why South Texas is now MAGA territory, because they understand their wages are being driven down. So I think the Republican Party hates the basic tenets of President Trump's platform. Particularly the one they most hate is ending the forever wars. That's tied to both Wall Street, it's tied to the defense industry, it's also tied to this mentality that we have in America American empire. Remember you and I saying, hey, we are actually a republic. We want to go back to being a republic. Like the founders of our country, when they set the Constitution, they looked to Republican Rome. That was their source of things, not the Roman Empire.
No.
What we've done, in fact, they said, I think it was General Washington, don't go over seas looking for monsters to slay.
Exactly.
Right? We have enough to...